So continuing with the series of talking with some of my multi-talented and friends and people that I know who work in the areas of connection and belonging in various ways. And we've talked about how connection and belonging is about connection to the self, to the community, to others and to the earth. And today I'm talking to Alison, who was speaking earlier before the call about we've known each other for about 14 years through several iterations and events and watched each other's extraordinary growth. And one of the things about Alison is her deep, deep commitment to connection and helping others to connect, to commitment and to integrity. Alison will now talk more about herself and the work that she's doing at the moment.
Hi, Karen. Thank you very much for inviting me along to Avalon Conversations. It's a great initiative, and I was only too happy to participate. So for me, I've been on this earth for nearly 5 decades, and I have managed to fill in quite a lot of stuff in that time. One of my greatest gifts, I think, are my children. I'm a mum of 4, and they range from 6 years of age to 19 years of age. I was very fortunate to be a mum in sort of 2 stages. We had our first 2 children, and after an 8-year gap, our number 3 child snuck up on us, which was actually a real blessing. I really enjoyed motherhood as an older parent, and then as a result his younger brother came along a couple of years later. So they are the lights of my life, and one of the reasons why I get up and do what I do each day. But I've come from a very long sales and marketing background. I guess in everything that I've done, there's always been some sort of business development or sales or marketing sort of thread to it. Prior to my career, I had a sporting career. So I have been an Australian and an Oceania champion weightlifter in Olympic weightlifting. And that came as a result of my sprinting. I took up weightlifting to help me with my strength and power and conditioning for my sprinting, and loved the sport. And so I was a pioneer in Tasmania in that sport, and went on and assisted New Zealand with setting up their female weightlifters over there, and had many years of competing for Australia in that sport. I think I ended up being ranked 34th in the world before I retired due to pregnancy. So that was a great part of my life. And whilst I was involved in that sport, I was also the business development or development officer for that sport. So I went around gyms and schools and talent identified people that were going to be suitable for the sport, but also teaching people how to lift safely and correctly from an occupational health and safety point of view. And I was then invited into the jail here to help their inmates with lifting and how to lift safely, and rolled it out across schools as well. So that was a really interesting time because I was melding my passion for my sport with a career. I spent a bit of time in childcare while I was doing that. Have always loved children and working with children and helping them to get a good foundation for reaching their potential in life. And it's still something that I'm very passionate about, and try to get myself involved in areas where I can work with children still to this day. I did do my fitness leader course and my strength and conditioning course, and went into personal training for a period of time. And that was a really good fallback when I was a mum. I could do that on a casual basis while I was at home bringing up the children. So just really enjoyed focusing on health and well-being. I went on to do some various business development roles, selling telecommunications and advertising and marketing and all sorts of things related to business, and had my own businesses in those. I also had a dating agency thrown in there. I did 10 years running Soulmates in Tasmania, which was obviously developing romantic connections for people looking for love. So I've always been interested in real estate, and that's what I'm doing now. I think it started when I was 3 or 4 years of age. I used to love going to my grandmother's house and exploring her home and just discovering what all the different spaces in the home were. And while I was doing that exploring, I came across information about my great-grandmother, who in the 1800s was actually a property investor and owned about 14 properties in Hobart, which was virtually unheard of for a Hobartian at the time, let alone a woman in the 1800s. So she did all of that without my great-grandfather's help. Yeah.
So a little like you, she's been quite the pioneer. And I guess one of the things that I've always really admired about you and about quite a few other women that are working now in another realm is they've drawn on this really varied past, and that actually serves them in their current work. It is a way of connecting with the self, because it's drawing on all of your skills and your passions, and that's certainly something that comes out in your work, is that you bring that passion to your work. And have been quite pioneering in the way, and now you're working in real estate, but even that is really quite pioneering in the way that you draw on connections and connecting people with places.
Yeah.
And it'd be really great to hear, about that.
Yeah. So I guess, even though as a child I had this fascination for real estate, and my mum actually worked when I was young, when I was 8 or 9 years of age, she actually worked for the man that I eventually went and worked for when I decided to go into real estate about nearly 5 years ago. So that was an interesting turn of events, because I'd seen him doing all of these things with people and helping them to achieve their goals, and I just thought, yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd like to be like him. And some 40 years later, I ended up going and working for him, which was quite uncanny. But I think that even though I did want to be an agent for a very long period of time, I think that what I bring to my role now is far greater than I could have ever done back then, due to all of my other experiences that I had. Because I quite literally now weave marketing and advertising and relationships and matchmaking and networking and all of those things into my role, so that I can create a really unique offering for my clients and customers. And I do believe that I get the results that I get in this industry because of that experience. So I'm not here just to purely help people buy and sell a house.
No, I totally get that. Yeah.
It's much deeper than that. I really want people to connect with the space. I want an energy transfer to occur when people walk into a home or create the home the way that they have always intended. I really want people to live intentionally in their home. And the reason for that is I really do believe that it is the foundation of success in our lives. We need to have a base somewhere, and it doesn't mean that we have to own it, but we just need to have a space where we feel connected, and that will become a natural extension of our life. I do believe that how we live at home will ultimately determine how we show up in life and with others. So and
I totally agree. As an architect, we've spoken about this. That if we are supported by an environment that is beautiful and nurturing or calming, or even just energetically appropriate for us, then a whole lot of other things in our life can flow from that. It's really difficult to have, it can have an effect on relationships when you're in an inappropriate environment, or effect on your health. So, it's something that we both have in common there, is that understanding about being able to connect with the space and a place. And you bring that to your real estate. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I'm fiercely passionate about people living in a space that does support them, where they can feel nurtured and safe and they can thrive. And so I do whatever I can to help them find that space, or if they're already living in a home and they have no intention of moving, to help them to create that within the home that they're already in. I come across a lot of people who aren't living in their home the way that they intended. That's not what they really want. It's not what they really like. And whether they've just got too busy, or there's been some other issue that has meant that they've not been able to create that or live that. I'm there to sort of guide them through that and to provide them with some inspiration, but first of all, to discover what it is that they really do want.
And I think perhaps people don't understand how important the environment can be. It's like, it's just, I've got a kitchen and I've got enough bedrooms, without really understanding how the quality of that environment and the energy of that environment can play out in their lives. And one of the things that I think we've talked about in the past too is you're bringing your matchmaking connection in and connecting people to align spaces. You don't just sell them any old house. It's like that's certainly my sense. It's selling them, so you're not just going to make a sale at any cost. You really are quite integrous and quite aligned with wanting to help people find the space that will support them. And I mean, that's really unusual.
At the end of the day, I really, once I made the commitment that I was heading into real estate, I really felt like I was home. It felt right. It felt where this was where I was meant to be. And so I have always approached my business as something that will be long-term and sustainable. So in a small town like Hobart, where a lot of people do know each other, and if you don't know them, they soon find out about you if something positive or negative happens. There was no other way but to be conducting myself with integrity and honesty and transparency, because that is how I help people to achieve what they really want. And then they obviously are connected to me. I become their agent. There is no other. And it means that they will obviously tell each other friends, and and all of those sort of things about how I've helped them to achieve what they wanted to achieve. So it's very important to me that people do feel nurtured and cared for and supported in the process.
And it appears to me when I have worked with you that you bring the soul to real estate. That's actually really quite lacking in a lot of the industry, and you bring the soul, and that really shows. And so
thank you.
It's your soul work, and we're all able to express our soul work through various ways, and it doesn't have to be, there's often a bit of a sense out there as you need to be a shaman or a therapist, but actually we bring our soul work through, and you're doing it in an industry that can sometimes be felt to lack a bit of soul, and and that's how you help people find their sense of belonging and connection, through your sense of belonging and connection. And so maybe would you like to talk about one or two examples of where you've really helped people achieve their goals, that have brought you joy and brought them joy?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, so I'm actually currently on location at the moment. I'm actually in a house that's due to settle this afternoon, and the couple that were selling it, they're moving because they wanted to downsize. So they're moving because they want to now find the last home that they will be in. And the Hobart market is quite competitive at the moment. There's very low numbers of houses on the market, and there is an extremely high number of buyers. So it's a very hard market to purchase in at the moment. And these sellers wanted to make sure that the house that they bought was the right house. So fortunately, they had one of their children offer for them to go and live in their space. They had some spare space in their home. So rather than having to rush that process, they had the joy of being able to move in without having to worry about being homeless, but also be able to take some time to find the right home, because it will be their last, home purchase. But that at the same time, the purchasers were scrambling to work out how they were going to get their moving all happening and be able to have beds to sleep in tonight. And so I arranged for them to have some early access. So I'm actually here at the house babysitting it while they're coming backwards and forwards with the moving truck. So their gear is coming in and I'm here to supervise that. And then I will lock up, and then once settlement's occurred, I'll hand them the keys. But at least then all of their stuff's here and they can start unpacking and they'll be able to rest easy tonight. So for me, I thought nothing of coming here and being able to work from this space rather than being in my office or being out on the road. I just cleared that space for them so that they could move with a sense of peace and calm. And that's a really important thing for me. So other examples are where I had another couple that were also downsizing. They lived in a beautiful hamlet called Woodbridge on some acreage, and they had lived there for many years, and they loved it. They still loved it, but they did realise that they were getting to an age where maintaining a couple of acres was going to become increasingly more difficult. The distance between them and a doctor's surgery, for example, or a chemist, or, indeed, if there was an emergency, a hospital, was, maybe a little bit, too far. So they engaged me to sell their home whilst they looked for another home closer to the city that was level, not a lot of garden to look after and things like that. Anyway, I managed to negotiate a longer settlement. The person that purchased their property was renting and their lease hadn't got to the end yet. So they were happy to continue seeing out their lease while this couple found a home. Anyway, we got towards the end of that 90-day settlement and the vendors had not yet found their next home, and they were getting very concerned. And when they were in their 80s, and they were starting to get very concerned about where they were actually going to live. So on the 3rd of January of that year, I was actually taking some leave, being Christmas, New Year. I was at my shack on Bruny Island, and they gave me a call and said, we still haven't found anything. And I said, right, okay, tomorrow I'm going door knocking. And so on the 3rd of January, I drove back up to the Kingborough area. They were wanting something in the Kingston Beach area particularly. So I started door knocking all of the doors in the level streets that were close to the cafes and the doctor's surgery and things like that. And I found them something. So they were absolutely overjoyed. The tenant that was in this particular investment property for the owner were moving out at the end of January, and settlement was due to happen on the 29th of January, I think it was, that year. And so in the end, we were able to facilitate all of that. At the last hour, we managed to find them something. But for me, it meant pounding the pavement for several hours. It was a hot day. But I met some really great people while I was doing that. I obviously was able to find them a home, and I have continued to remain connected to the vendor of that property as a result of that transaction. And he ended up getting a fantastic price for it, but my vendors at the other property were obviously ecstatic that I'd found them the most perfect home. So
how did you know, sorry, I've interrupted, how did you know it was the perfect home? Because that's part of your matchmaking.
Yeah.
But you're connecting, you are able to connect people to the perfect home.
Yep.
So how do you do that?
Obviously I ask a lot of questions. So it's like, when I interviewed people in my matchmaking business, I would ask a lot of questions. Introducing someone to the right person is a very complicated, complex process. And, ultimately at the end of the day, you can have all of the boxes ticked in terms of what it is that you want, but it will also come down to a feeling. And so it's knowing the feeling that they want conjured up when they walk through the door, as well as having those other things. So there was the obvious things, that it needed to be level access, it needed to be on one level, it needed to have some parking close by so that it was easy for them to park their car and, you know, get out with a bag of groceries. It needed to have 2 bedrooms, and it needed to have a view. They had a beautiful view where they were, and they didn't want to compromise on that. So I was able to get them something on the esplanade at Kingston Beach, so they look straight out at the water, which they love. And of course it's all flat, so they can walk out their front door, out onto the path and across the road, and then they've got a completely flat walking path to be able to still get some fresh air and walk and exercise and sunshine, and all of those things are important. And it's a very short walk down to the little corner store and the cafe, and round the corner to some medical services, and then a very short taxi trip if they need to go anywhere more specialised from a medical perspective. So in the end, I when I walked into it, it felt right for me based on what I had determined from my conversations with them. And then, of course, it ticked a lot of the other boxes as well.
So the feeling right is really important too, because we can, as you said, we can tick the boxes and go, well, that house ticks this box and it's got enough bedrooms and it's got a view, but how does it feel? And connecting people with the sense of the environment that they want, rather than always just, you know, it's not always just about the having enough bedrooms and having enough storage.
Yeah, correct.
So,
I think whether we notice it or not, there is an energy transfer between us and the home and the environment that the home's in as well. So it's just as much about the home as it is about the community or the neighbourhood that home is in too, as well. You know, sometimes you'll feel like you belong and sometimes you won't. So yes, that's true. So we're kind of just wrapping up, and so what changes have you witnessed in your community as a result of the work that you're doing? I think that I'm hoping that what I'm achieving is a different outlook on buying and selling property. I certainly notice the difference in my clients and customers when we've achieved something, their level of energy, you know, the smile that's now on their face, you know, they have a spring in their step and they have some enthusiasm. I mean, I catch up with my previous buyers and sellers on a fairly regular basis, and, you know, it's great to see them, you know, like I dropped in to do an appraisal and somebody that I'd sold a house to was walking his dogs. And so we yelled out, "G'day, Alison." And he came over and he got his phone out and he was showing me his renovations. And, you know, I just really love the fact that, you know, people are excited when they have the right space and, you know, they are engaged with that space and connected to it, that they are enthusiastic about it, and you know, it inspires them. So, and I think ultimately at the end of the day, when you've got all of that, you know, in play, everything flows for them. So, you know, they are successful. They, you know, the things that they're attempting, you know, bring a result. And so that's really great to see. And I think, I mean, at one home at a time, I just want to see people living in their home the way they always intended. I have too many conversations with vendors who are putting their house on the market and they're spending all of this time and money presenting it in a way that they feel is right to present to market. And then they, you know, it gets done and we're ready to go to market and do photography, and they do this breath and go, "Oh, it looks so beautiful now. I don't know whether I want to sell." And they're sort of saying that tongue in cheek because they are selling. But ultimately what they're saying to me is that they've never lived in their home the way that they felt connected to it. And now they've felt connected to it, but they're going to pass it on to someone else. That breaks my heart. It's, you know, it's like just...
It breaks my heart too.
Just live in your home the way you always intended and enjoy it while you're there. It's so important for you and your well-being And ultimately, it is also important for the value in your home when you do decide that it's time to sell. Because if you've been keeping it well, you know, then you don't have to do much to get it ready for sale, and people can feel that that home is loved and nurtured. The energy will be right for them too.
That's true, and I certainly agree with that. So I know that you have a lot of your own personal practices to stay kind of embodied and in your own sense of connection to who you are. If you were going to give one little tip today about a little practice that we could all be inspired by and try to do, what might that be?
Yeah. I think apart from that little last bit of advice of live in your homes the way you always intended, create that space that you love now, I think practice self-compassion and self-love. I think ultimately it starts with us. I think for me, connection ultimately is love. And love can have many forms, but I think, if we are having robust conversations with ourselves in silence and really contemplating or thinking about, you know, what it is that we value, what it is that we believe, what is it that we really want, what is it that we love, and we then form that really strong, deeply bonded connection with ourselves, then how we show up in the world will get noticed. And it might be a subconscious thing, but it will impact others because you are bringing yourself to the world authentically, and that will help in your sense of belonging, and it will enable you to connect with others more effectively, to then inspire them to also connect with themselves and form a sense of belonging.
Beautiful, amazing. And I certainly see that's what you bring to your work. So if people want to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, okay. So I work at LJ Hooker Pinnacle Property here in Hobart. So certainly you can go to the Pinnacle Property website. I also have a property concierge, another thing that I've introduced to help people in their way. And so www.stella, spelt with an R, STELLAR property, so stellaproperty.com.au. And certainly I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Alison Rogers Property Agent. So certainly happy to connect with people there. I do provide hints and tips and information on how to create a home on those pages as well.
Well, you've always been extremely generous with your knowledge and sharing and information, and I see that in your Facebook pages. So, Alison, thank you. That was beautiful. So happy to connect, and we'll say goodbye now.
Thank you. Yes, perfect timing. The truck's just arrived to unload the next load, so perfect timing. And thank you very much, and good luck with future Avalon Pathways conversations.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.